speech, Saad, and thanks for that background. I'm sure some of us are familiar and some aren't with this topic, and it is increasingly becoming topical for governments who are, and particularly ones, for example, in this area in the Gulf, who are going out and investing in new agricultural land for future food security. So I'm going to take it to the floor for questions if anybody would like to take. Okay, Ed, thank you.
Yeah, Eddie O'Sullivan from Mead. Hello, so thank you very much for an excellent presentation. I thought you really nailed it on the issue about that's facing Africa. I was in Zambia a year ago, and it's extraordinary enigma that a country with 25% of Africa's water, 25% of Africa's water, and almost unlimited fertile land, which could produce huge amounts of food, actually imports food, and is incapable of exporting food competitively. And the focus on infrastructure, which you referred to as being the absolute priority in building it, there's been a lot of experimentation with infrastructural finance over the last 30 years. And the net result in Africa, and not just there, is that practically everywhere in the world there's not enough infrastructure.
Correct.
There are power cuts in places where there shouldn't be power cuts.
Mm-hmm.
As a financier and someone who's followed these developments, what do you believe is the future for infrastructure finance of large-scale road projects, for example, and railway projects in Africa, which you have already said is essential for Africa to produce enough food for itself and for the world?
Well, as a banker, it's easier for us, to finance an investor who's coming and has a long-term lease of a piece of land and who's going to invest money to develop his own infrastructure needed to export the food for himself. Then for the government, it makes it a lot more easier for us. And this was exactly the case for the South Koreans. You know, they were about to lease a piece of land for 99 years and invest $6 billion to build infrastructure needed for them to export these goods. This, I believe, is the most efficient way for the Africa to build this infrastructure, and for us to finance it.
When you were Ethno Trainer is my name. When you were talking about international companies going into African countries doing that, surely they should perhaps propose a deal, or the government should work that while they're doing all that, they must also maybe produce some food for the thugs. I mean, are there cases in Africa right now where they're actually exporting more out of the country than, and they're not self-sufficient?
Ethiopia, Sudan.
Already, yeah?
Yeah.
So surely the world community should maybe look at this and look at the big companies that are actually investing in these countries, and maybe people like yourself propose issues like this, that deal when you're advising governments is let these people come in, give them X amount of land, but part of the deal is that they then, almost like what they do in the UK, if you're now building a new property, you have to build in an element of social housing.
Absolutely, absolutely. In Africa, you have to deal. Absolutely. When you deal with Africa, you have to deal with local governments, as well as the local farmers. Most of the farmers have been living in their lands without a title deal for generations, and this is the real problem. You've had the likes of certain North African countries coming in and buying humongous amount of land, using the water and dislocating all the people to Ireland in the 19th century. This is exactly what happened. And we're trying not to replicate the same mistakes as what happened 150 years ago. So it is much more challenging for companies today because they have to deal with several parties: the governments and the local farmers, the local farming population.
Any more questions? Anybody? Yeah.
Thank you. I want to thank Mr. Benani for his presentation. I would just like to add one gloss on the example of Ireland. Of course, it did change the course of Irish political and cultural and demographic history, but as it manifests itself today, it is a cultural impact which has lasted, so that the focus on hunger and the focus on food security is probably the key, one of the 2 or 3 key focuses of the Irish Overseas Aid Programme. I think that picks up the question that was asked here, that it's not all about the investment and the return. It's also about the assistance we can provide to these countries to help themselves without expecting a direct financial return to ourselves on it. And I'd say that is the legacy of what Mr. Saad has, of the example that Mr. Saad used of Ireland.
To make it sustainable, you need to link food security to financial returns.
Yeah, no, you do, but it depends where the returns go, I suppose.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more questions? We are expecting Sheikh Nahyan to come in any minute, but we'll keep going. Sorry, make my way across.
Hello. You mentioned the leases of being 99 years.
Yes.
That seems to me a very, very long time, 4 generations, and an awful lot of situations could change. You could get sort of distrust locals. Do you feel that is the optimum time, or do you think a smaller time would be, a shorter time would be more politically acceptable?
Well, you know, in the case of South Korea, well, the transaction failed, by the way, because of political situation. But in the case of South Korea, they were going to invest $6 billion. And the food security aspect is a long-term notion, is a long-term issue that we have to face. So the likes of South Korea, Japan, and other countries, they need to secure, at least on paper, from a legal perspective, land for a long period of time. You know, leasing for less than 99 years and investing $6 billion or more does not make financial sense to some extent. I've bought a house in Dubai for 99 years. I lived for 99 years. So you know, this happens in every field.
Yep.
I want to pick up on the last part of your presentation where you said the international investors ought to build partnership with local population.
Yes.
In countries that do not have democratic institutions, how do you do that? If you do not have autonomous from the government institutions, how we as international investors, we don't want to play politics, how do we do that?
Well, there are institutions, there are institutions that are independent. The World Bank, the institutions such as Mr. Geldof, Sir Geldof's, there are institutions that have a direct contact, direct link with the local population, with the locals. These are the type of people we have to deal with. We have to make sure that we fill up the needs of the local populations. We have to make sure that we don't move the local farmers out of the land that they have been living for generations. These are the people we have to work on. It's not easy. I agree 100%.
It's not easy. We know from our experience in Sudan, it doesn't work.
I agree. It's not an easy solution, but it is. I think it's the only solution today. If you're dealing with the government that may or may not be here tomorrow, then you have to renegotiate every couple of years an agreement with them. So if you deal with the local population, you know that the farmers, it's in his best incentive to stay in his farm and to grow food for himself, for his family, and for you and for us. If it is in his best interest for us to build schools, to feed him, and in order to help him feed us.
Any more questions? Left, right.
Thank you, Diala. I'm James McCallum of Synergy. My question is of yourself, but I appreciate from some of the questions which have already been asked in the room, there might be others who may be better at answering this. But just listening to your talk about, you know, how investors need to consider the investment that they're making into these African countries, you know, I'd welcome your perspective on the trade-off between the 99-year lease, the government security aspect, and, if you like, the project finance partnering with equity finance investment profile that's going into African projects. Now, Credit Suisse obviously is a bank in and of itself. So as you take a look at land investments in Africa, you know, what is it that you are looking for in terms of the blend of, if you like, social banking through something like the World Bank, equity investment, and loan or project finance? What's the typical blend of that?
I will go one step further. Now, the land acquisition and project finance is just one aspect of the problem. what we recommend to our clients is that, and what our clients are doing, is that they buy into other companies where there's the knowledge and the skills that they can replicate into this land. Today, a lot of the sovereign investors are buying into agricultural companies that have the know-how, that have the research and development to develop new ways to enhance, new ways to manage water. And the combination of this technology transfer, as well as the land acquisition, as well as the financing for new projects, this combination will help resolve the issue, we believe. The technology is one of the major aspects of this major puzzle, piece of the puzzle. And this is something that has been disregarded in the past.
Yeah, I guess a slightly follow-on question, if we've got time, Diala, for one more. It was the relationship between investing in land in Africa for food, which I'll be talking about today, or potentially the emerging biomass space, where there is a contrast. You said the three aspects were water, energy, and food. Do you have any comment on the investment profile of biomass energy investment versus food investment?
Well, the link is going to be in terms of pricing. As the energy prices fluctuate and more volatile, it's going to make the price of foods more volatile. It's going to make it more challenging to allocate resources for food or for energy. The production of corn has not decreased, but it's the allocation of corn for biofuels or for food that has been different. The price of oil has increased so high that it makes it more profitable, that people are looking at alternative fuel opportunities and using biofuels to replace the more expensive fossil fuels. So it's the allocation of goods that we have to be better at.
Wrap it up there. We're expecting Sheikh Nahyan and Sir Bob Geldof to come in any minute. Thank you very much, Mr. Benani from Credit Suisse, for your knowledge and insight. Thank you, everybody. I believe that Sheikh Nahyan is joining us any minute, so you can chat among yourselves.